there's always a moment, and even if you miss that moment, another one will come where you get to make a decision. And for me, the moment was I had been like sitting out back and I looked into the house and there's a big window that's like kind of floor to ceiling. But from the light outside and the light inside, plus the TV and the sun, the way the reflection was looking, when I looked in, I saw my reflection and I looked like my dad.
Hello and welcome to Quick Before You Forget, a personal growth and development podcast dedicated to helping you build your unreal life from the ground up using tools like music, mindset, and movement to remember who you are while you build who you were meant to be. Today's guest is Dr. Antonio Harrison, known by many and loved by many as Coach Doc. Coach Doc is a behavior scientist, an educator, a former athlete and coach, and a lifelong student of what actually helps people change. His work lives at the intersection of discipline, compassion, and lived experience, and today we're focusing on his story. Doc, welcome back to Quick Before You Forget.
I'm excited to be back. This is awesome. I had a great time the first time, which is obviously why I said yes to part 2.
Round 2, let's go. So how have things been for you since we first talked?
Oh, they've been relatively well. There's been some changes in my life, but all changes don't mean that they're bad. When one door closes, another opens, and I am actually at peace with a lot of it. It's funny. The only job I've ever held for longer than 5 years is football coaching.
And you love football coaching.
I love it. So that's the only, everything else after around 5-year mark, I'm kind of like, I think it's time for something new. So to have been in the last position I was, where I was a VR fitness coach for 7 years, it was like, okay, I'm familiar with this. So what's the next door opening?
Change happens and growth happens on the other side of it. So it's good. That's a good mindset that you have there. And, one of the things that this time I think might be offering you is a little more time with your kids. So when I was researching for our second conversation and kind of re-listening to our first conversation, one of the things that struck me was you love being a dad.
I love it.
You love being a dad. So talk to me about how, if you, I guess, had to choose something that you want to make sure your kids don't forget, what would that be?
So I'll give you 2 stories. I love my stories.
I'm ready.
Well, so first, I can't remember, forgive me if I repeat anything from part 1, but in 2nd grade, Mrs. Russell, I only remember 2 things about her class. One was building a T-Rex out of cardboard boxes. And the other was, as so many teachers do, they go around the room and ask every kid what they want to be when they grow up. And my answer was, I want to be an NBA player and a great dad, verbatim. And so knowing that at 2nd grade, it was really important to me. And I remember, if you watch the first episode, I talked about Miss Atkinson who put the notes in my brown paper bag. Here she is again. We were once having a conversation and I was telling her about how I'm really hoping I'm providing well for my kids and I'm trying to do my best. And this was earlier in my 25, 26. And she said, you could be living in a cardboard box. As long as your kids know that they are loved, you're doing your job. So to answer your question, I just want them to feel loved at all times, no matter what they do. Dad loves you. Unconditional love. I may not agree with what you may have done or how you behaved, but it doesn't mean I love you any less.
How does that reflect what you learned or how you were loved by your dad?
Both my mom and dad, my mom taught me unconditional love. My dad showed me what that looked like, especially for a boy. So 16 years old, pulled over for got a DUI in possession, was taken in at like 11 p.m. Around 3 a.m., they call home. I'm going to get released to my parents. And they pull me out of the cell and they handcuff me to a chair behind the lobby desk. Car comes screeching into the parking lot. I know that's my mom. Like, I know it. I know it, right? My sister opens the door with this shit-eating grin on her face, just like looking at me. My mom comes in and she's going off, rightfully so. And then my dad walks in. If you've never seen my dad, he's about 6'2", 225, 230 pounds of solid muscle, this very dominating, hulking presence. And he doesn't say a word, looking very stoic, and he walks straight to the swinging door of the lobby desk and opens it. And all the officers are like, sir, sir, and they put their hands on their guns. And he walks right over to me, lifts me up as much as he could, just because I'm still handcuffed to the chair, looks at me and goes, are you okay? I'm like, yeah. And he gives me a hug. And we had a conversation about it later. And he said, he's been through a lot. And he goes, in that moment, I knew I lost my license. I potentially lost my scholarship. I potentially lost my college opportunities. There was so much more I was going to, and maybe a criminal case. There was so much more I was going to have to deal with. To yell at me in that moment wasn't going to do anything. What I needed to know and be reaffirmed of was, I still love you. I want to make sure you're okay. You're my son. We're going to get through this. And so that was a huge moment for me of, this is what it looks like to show love as a father.
Mm. Well, that speaks to your work with fathers, leaders, everyday people. What is one myth about masculinity that you want to bust for your audience, for our audience?
I love this. I actually did a whole workshop for a high school on masculinity. And the number one drive home point was, you get to define it. No outside source can define that. So this idea of toxic masculinity, this idea of feminine masculinity, alpha male, dominant male, whatever you want to call, all these outside voices do not define that. You get to define for yourself what masculinity looks like. Now, that does have a lot to do with your upbringing and the way you see the world. However, I raised my son to open doors for both women, men, and children. That's what we do. I raised my sons to say, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir. I raised my sons to be independent. I raised them to take on responsibility, but I also raised them to be kind, where if you see someone who's in need of help, you go help. Whenever we're driving and I see someone stalled in the street, I pull my car over, we get out and we push that car to safety. My middle son just did with me a couple of weeks ago. And so the key point I always tell folks is, you get to define that. Stop listening to the outside sources tell you what masculinity is going to. And as long as your definition isn't harming anyone or impeding their right to freedom, your definition is on point.
Well, you played sports. You've played a lot of different kinds of sports, including NCAA football, and then coached, high school football for years. I think, do you still coach high school football?
No, once my sons really got into it and it became serious, I was like, I'm going to take a step back so I can be at their practices, their games. I don't want to lose out time with my kids raising someone else's.
That's fair. So tell me though, based on your experience with, speaking of the masculinity, tying that together, but based on your experience with sports at that level, how did that change how you approach life off the field?
Discipline, commitment to put in the work, even though you may never get an opportunity to deploy it at all. Right. I've seen so many people put in so much work and never get the shine. Or you could be the person who puts in all the work and shows up and does great things, but because you're not the one in the bright lights scoring the touchdowns, your name's not in the newspaper, right? But football is such a unique sport in two ways, in that, one, it's the ultimate team sport. Every position has a job, and the whole system breaks down if one person doesn't do their job. This isn't basketball, though I love it, where Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen can just take over and dominate, right? And the other thing about it is, it shows you that there is an end to all things.
Mm.
My dad took me to play pickup basketball well into his late 50s, early 60s growing up. Football, the moment you hang up the cleats and pads and helmet, you don't ever get to put those on again. There's no grown men at the park in pads trying to play pickup. Like when it's done, it's done. Right. So you have to squeeze all you can out of it and learn as much as you can from it, because when it's over, it's over. And for those kids out there or parents who think their kids are going to be professionals, even if they make it and they have the greatest career ever, they'll be done at latest by mid 30s.
Right.
Then what? So what did you cultivate within yourself outside of that? And sports in general, but especially football, has really helped me understand that and understand what it means to have a true brotherhood or sisterhood or just bond with people for something greater outside of yourself.
Well, tribe matters an awful lot, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of, I mean, talk to that. Talk to me about how tribe has showed up in your life after that time, because obviously you said, like, football comes to an end, but you build tribe after that. So what does that look like?
One of the lessons I learned is your tribe will find you when you are genuine and authentic. Trying to go and find your tribe, it's possible, but it's a lot harder. So doing the things you love to do and putting it out there, people will come, they will show up, and you will genuinely find that. It may take a little bit longer as you try to figure those things out. But it's also interesting in recognizing who within the tribe and the actual dynamics of the tribe that is loving and the ones that are not. When I got, now mind you, 4-year starter, freshman college athlete of the year, 2-time all conference. When I hurt my knee, one person out of a 50 plus man roster and 12 coaches came to visit me in the hospital. One. I was used up. My purpose as a resource was done. They had to continue their season. I get it. Right. But that
I
was,
don't get it. As a human being, I don't understand. Why were they not there for you?
well, it's tough to think like how are college students who don't have a car going to drive 45 minutes to come see me? The coaches still have to play a game the next week and they've got their own family. So, yes, would I have loved the entire team to be by my bedside? Of course. Did it hurt? Definitely so. But I knew who was my real tribe and who was just the tribe for the moment, for what I could do for him. That was it. And after football, I found my tribe in different ways, but definitely through Supernatural and VR Fitness, that tribe has shown up, especially in current situation. They have been there to support and to show love and to reach out and offer opportunities and help in any way they can. And it's overwhelming and humbling because you don't realize the impact you actually make, even when people tell you on a daily basis, until you find yourself in a situation where you do need help.
We are both, you and I, in seasons of change and transition. And, they talk about the whole reason, season, lifetime. If people are in your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. But what you're speaking to in the group of Supernatural VR specifically is so powerful because it is a living, breathing example of what you said about being your authentic, real self and attracting your tribe. And you've done that through this app. But the coolest part about the supernatural world that is different now than it used to be is we're all doing that. Like authentically, we're all showing up. Like you and the other coaches have laid this foundation that makes us all feel safe and seen to show up as ourselves. And it's just really cool to see.
And it's funny because the evolution happened for us coaches as well. If you go back to the very first workouts released in 2020, you all of us are unrecognizable when you go to the latest, newest workouts. Um, and I had mentioned this with some of the private messages I had sent to the coaches, but watching their evolution really helped me evolve and become more of my authentic self, right? Understanding that I don't have to be them and seeing them be themselves and allowing me to be myself and them embracing that as well with the members. it was a, it's interesting to think that you finally figure out who you are and are comfortable with yourself when you're 42, right? Like it's a, you go, wow, I spent this much time on the earth, but now is when I'm finally comfortable in my skin wholeheartedly. So it's been a nice journey.
Speaking of that journey and the tribe specifically, if you had to choose one person to tell you who you are if you forget, who would you choose?
Uh, like person in the physical flesh,
Or anyone?
I'd be God. Um, remind me, tell me who I am. Uh, when I am in silence, be still, and I
Mm.
am God. Like, so that's what I'd want to remind me. But if we're talking about in flesh, um, it'd be my family. I want my family to always remind me of who I am, not just in the loving way, but also in the loving way in which we will poke at each other. We will make fun of each other. We will all test each other. And it's always a great thing when I'm with them. There's immediately I'm transported to this is what it's all about.
Tell me about the earliest moment that you realized that you weren't interested in performance, but in why humans behave the way they do. Like what changed for you?
You know, it was it really had to do when I went to college and I was trying to figure out what my major was. I landed on psychology. At first I wanted to be a philosophy major, but I went into philosophy 101 and my professor, forgive me, but was a pompous asshole and I did not like him. And he made the whole experience horrible. And I was like, if this is what it's going to be, I don't want any parts of it. Uh, so I landed on psychology because I was like, I want to know why my family does the things they do. I want to understand who they are. And it wasn't until I ended up going into grad school that I realized all of the situations and life experiences I had been in created I utilized a survival skill that ended up becoming a superpower.
Mm.
And that was the skill of observation. I could walk into a room and diagnose and break down and analyze everything that was happening. Because when I was younger, I had to go into rooms or places and go, there's the exit. That person's safe. I can run to that person for help. I have to stay away from that person. And this person's doing something over here that no one else sees, but I see you. And so when I went into behavior analysis, it just made sense. I had already had a skill that I had been utilizing all my life, and now I get to put some formal knowledge to it to sharpen that steel even more. And so that's really where it came from was a survival skill that ended up being a superpower for me.
Do you have more of those? I'd love to hear about another story of survival or a struggle becoming a strength, something that you turned into a good that was maybe not so good on the surface.
I go back to one being resilience. When I did hurt my knee, people don't understand my first surgery was 12 and a half hours on the cutting table. And 10 hours into it, I started to come to and they flooded me with anesthesia because they were scared of anaphylactic shock. So I was put into a medically induced coma for 3 days. I
Three
lost,
days.
yeah, I lost 45 pounds in those 3 days. I woke up a shell of myself. And it took me 8.5 to 9 months to walk again. I was casted hip to toe. And this is in Iowa from September to June. Like it was brutal. So crutching through snow, right? But that was just another level of resilience because growing up, we had to survive. I had to make sure I'm going to find where I get my next meal. I got to make sure that my sister's okay. I got to make sure that I get all the grades and do all the things and play all the sports and give myself the best opportunities and go to the better schools when given that chance. So resilience was another common theme. And as weird as this is going to sound, my dad's abrasive and aversive coaching style gave me the ability to have enhanced confidence as well as Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but compartmentalize emotions. My dad was old school. He didn't care if you were the best or the worst. He was going to be right in your face telling you what you did wrong. And when I was younger, as he would be yelling while I was on the court, I would well up with tears and like just, it just crushed me. And I remember being around 12 years old at New Revelation Baptist Church, playing in the gym, and we were destroying this team. And he's still yelling. And it just, at that point, and I was like, I don't understand. Like, that's how he understands how to coach. He doesn't know any different. And it went in one ear and out the other. And I listened to the message instead of how it was delivered,
Mm.
which gave me the ability to separate emotion from context and emotion from the message, from what I really needed to hear versus what this person's actually feeling.
Everything in my life reminds me of a song. So that story made me think of the song by Alex Warren called First Time on Earth, where he talks, it's a song he wrote for his mom, who they didn't have a good relationship, and it's a long story that we don't need to go into, but that is a good song for anybody that needs some perspective and some grace and some love for a parent that maybe doesn't always deliver the message the way that we think we need it, but we always somehow get what we need from it. And we know that our parents love us, and sometimes it's just their first time on earth too. They're just
Yeah.
figuring it all out too. And as I'm getting like as I'm getting older, and my kids are 10 and 12 now, I feel it every day. I look at my parents when they were at my age, and I thought they were so old and disconnected and didn't understand anything. And of course, they were just doing their dang best, you know?
Yeah. And they're doing their best in a world that is new to them. Like I look at my kids and what they have to navigate. I couldn't imagine having a cell phone in middle school or let alone social media. Like they're college, high school? No way. I would have been in so much trouble. Like there's absolutely no way. So understanding like what they deal with, even my two older ones are now, my oldest one has been dating for a while. He's in a relationship with his girlfriend, and my little one just kind of, he's going with someone now. I remember we would stay up on the phone with the long cord, and you would be on the phone all night, but that would happen maybe once in the week or something like that. They now FaceTime each other. So there's constant face to face interaction, even through a device to where it's like, oh, let's watch a movie. We can put FaceTime on and watch it together and press play on Netflix. And it's like, that blows my mind. And what that does to a dynamic of the relationships, we are going to find out in a few decades. But like, it's a hard thing to navigate. Like that just creates a world that I'm foreign to, but I'm learning about.
It's scary sometimes. It's scary, but we're trying our best, right? Like just like our parents did. And when I feel like I need to be clear that like I'm very, very grateful for the parenting that I got.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting when you start to process it as a quote grown up your own self. It gives you a different level of perspective.
Well, and one of the things that I always praise my parents for, even though we went through so much, and most people are like, how in the world are you still best friends with your dad? He never lied to me. He owned his shit. He was honest, which gave me the opportunity to go, all right, do I want to accept that and move forward, or do I want to be mad at him? As opposed to lying to me and then finding out later that he lied, and now I am mad and holding a grudge. It was my choice of how I wanted to respond based off of the truth and not a lie.
That's powerful. And similarly, I was thinking more about what you said about the ability to observe things like that and the ability to kind of translate it in your head. That is something that you've honed in on, you've practiced, you know how to handle it, you know what you're doing with it. But it's very intimidating for some people to walk into a room and not know what they're observing. So I'm curious, honestly, what you would suggest to somebody that's new and trying to be more observant and try to be more aware of the surroundings that they're in emotionally, not just with the words or the physical environment, but the emotional environment. And that's something that we could all use more of. So I'm curious what your advice would be to people that want to be more observant and adjust their behavior appropriately.
First off, don't stare at everybody. That's number one, right? Like, just, as you scan.
Don't
But
be obvious.
I'll give one very practical tip anybody can use to enhance their ability to observe behavior, emotions, awareness of the room. And it's one of the things that made me quickly become second in command as a bouncer at a club within a couple months. And I was given the most out of control area of a nightclub to control, which is the dance floor. That's where everything happens. And after every night after we would work, as the baristas and the bartenders and the waitresses, as they would cash out, we would hang out, have a beer, and then we'd all be assigned somebody to walk back to their car, and then we can go home. And I remember one night we were sitting there, and the main guy in command was off-duty sheriff, and everybody was kind of joking about how I had only been there like a month and a half, and all of a sudden I've got the best spot, and then all this, you're giving him all this trust, and he just kind of looked at me and he goes, "Tell him why." He's like, "We've never talked about it, but I know." And he's like, "Tell him why you're able to spot things happening before everyone else." And I said, "I look for the opposites. If you're in a nightclub, it's supposed to be loud, boisterous, laughter, just mayhem kind of on the dance floor. The moment it gets quiet, something's wrong. Something's wrong. That means everyone's stopped what they're doing and they're watching something that's happening that's about to unfold. So if you walk into somewhere, let's say the grocery store, and you hear someone being from all the way on the other end being very, very loud, that's not supposed to happen in a grocery store, right? If you walk into an amusement park where it's supposed to be very loud and boisterous and a lot of roller coasters, but all of a sudden it's dead silent, what's going on? So looking for the opposite, or at least being aware when it happens to be able to observe that, you can immediately go, "Oh, okay." Part of that too is the other part. So that's the practical tip. The other part is something that I think you just have to have had enough life experience in being around certain things. So for example, I remember being at a conference and we were staying at the same hotel that UFC fighters were staying at because they were fighting in the arena across the street. So you've got UFC fighters who are celebrities, right? So when we went down to the bar, I remember one of my colleagues going, "Look at this guy. He's talking about this gentleman at the table. He's like, he's got, these three beautiful women on his arm. Like, wow, like that's, polyamory at its finest." So I was like, "That's a pimp. Like, they're not in a relationship. Look how he's dressed. Look at how he's scanning the room. Look at what these women were doing in terms of waiting for the professional fighter to walk up, and then he would tap one to go talk." Like, don't make the assumption. Hold that assumption for a second and then just watch. You'll see what happens. Right. So it's just but I wouldn't have known that had I not seen something like that growing up.
I was going to ask you for your best story from the nightclub, and I think we just got it. What happened then? Like, what happened next?
Oh, nothing, people, one woman would leave with somebody, another one would get rejected and come back to him. And I paid no mind to it. The colleague I was with, who was fascinated that I diagnosed that so quickly, they kind of just watched all night long. And I was like, I'm not concerned with that. Like, I'm going to continue having my fun. I'm not buying, anything. So, whatever do you over there.
Well, I love your stories. So tell me an unreal moment that's happened that made a significant impact on your trajectory of your life, for good or bad.
I told the knee injury story, so I'll leave that there. I think that was a big one. I think another one for me was my mom would have this thing where when she really wanted to share something, she would ask if I wanted to go run errands with her. What kid wants to run errands with their mom? No kid, right? Unless they're gonna get something. But I observed the pattern that every time she did that, we really didn't run any errands. We like went to the post office box and then kind of drove around but she needed the distraction of the road so that she didn't look at me so that she could share whatever she needed to share. Maybe that's not, you don't want to put some of the burdens on your child. But again, the truth was important in our home. So at 10 years old, my mom couldn't come up with any more excuses of why, like, Christmas presents were missing or why dad would be gone for multiple days or would be, on vacation or visiting his family for a couple weeks or whatever. Uh, and so she just came out and was just like, your dad's going in and out of jail because he has an addiction to crack cocaine. And I can't keep lying and making up excuses. I feel really bad and I'm out of lies. And I just need you to know that and understand, like, this is why I'm working so many jobs. This is why, like, I need so much help with you and your sister, with your little sister. And so, yes, part of my innocence was stripped there as a 10-year-old, but I immediately understood, like, it's time to put childish things away. Like, my mom needs me, my family needs me, and I'm going to make sure that I'm there and doing everything. So my mom loves to tell the story how she never had to help me with homework or even see me do it because she'd be like, do you have homework? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, well, when did you do it? On the bus ride home. Well, don't you have a spelling test tomorrow? I studied on the bus ride. Right. Like, I just took care of the things I was supposed to take care of, my chores, my grades, my athletics, being respectful. I just made sure that that wasn't a burden that was she would need to carry. It was my misbehavior when she already had to carry so many. And then once the cat was out of the bag, my dad just thought it's safer instead of being in the streets to just use at home. So that changes everything because now you see it firsthand, what it physically and psychologically does to a person in the moment that they're high. And it's a scary thing. So you want to talk about being observant. You got to pay attention. You better pay attention because you don't know what you could be walking into at any given moment. And so you have to recognize the patterns, recognize the sounds, recognize the movements, recognize the tone of voice in the way in which someone is talking to go, oh, this is not a moment to come and bother or ask for anything. So it made me hyper aware.
Which is amazing. Such a gift and a blessing to come out of it. And you speak highly of your dad. Like, you respect him, you love him, and you've had to forgive him for a lot of things. So how have you worked through forgiveness?
Besides the honesty piece of him always being honest, I was able to look and go, when he's using, that's not my dad. Like, that drug has such a grip on him. Everything about it, his look, his actions, his words, like, that's not the person I know. When he's not using, he loves me and he has me on his hip and takes me everywhere and just praises me and introduces me to everybody, right? And like puts me in all these beautiful situations. So I was able to go, that's not him over there. This is who I choose to see as my dad. And there was only one time where it was really, really difficult for me. He had spent my entire senior year in jail. And it was my best high school year of athletics. And I was just down. I was all in the newspaper all year, like all of it. And at the end of the year, they give high school awards, athlete of the year, valedictorian, all that type of stuff. And so they called my mom and go, we're not supposed to reveal to the students, but because your son's going to win athlete of the year, we want to let you know so that you can come to the assembly. And so it just happened to be that my dad was released the day before. So we pick him up and, we have a pack of Newports, a Snickers bar, and an orange soda. Those are like the three things he always wanted coming out of jail. We go home and I'm telling him like, yeah, this is the thing we're going to get. And he like comes home. We all have dinner or whatever and goes to his favorite spot to eat. And he gets all his clothes. He irons them. He sets them out by the side of his bed. He's going to have this problem with his son. And I go to school the next morning and I get up on stage and I look out and I see that my mom and my sister are in the back row, but my dad's not there. And I knew immediately what happened. I knew immediately. Oh, it got him. He got excited about something, got all dressed, and he probably did it really, really early in the day. And that gap from like 9 a.m. till that 2:30 assembly, he was just sitting in the house while my sister was at school. My mom was at work by himself, and he just couldn't, avoid the pull. And he went and did what he did. And so that was like the roughest. And I got the award, walked off stage, walked up the rows, handed it to my mom, and walked out and walked home. And I always felt bad about doing that because my mom and sister were there to support me, and I should have recognized that and given them their love and props in that moment. But I was so hurt. And so we've talked about it, my dad and I, and that was one moment. But again, I also understood like the pull of that level of addiction. Didn't matter that I was his son. Like he couldn't control it.
Addiction is so hard.
Yeah.
And I speak from experience. Excuse me. Your story made me a little emotional. So I speak from experience, and I want to say I'm really sorry that happened to you. I just feel that was not, it was heavy, and it's still with you. And it's so inspiring how you've been able to still have that relationship with your dad and talk through and work through and even kind of feel bad for your mom and your sister in what was a really hard situation for you. You handled it as best you could. And I wish I could go back and give Coach Doc then a hug, just to be like, you did the best you could with what you had in that situation. And it sucks. Like that whole thing just sucks. And, we've talked a little bit and I've shared a little bit about my own struggles with addiction, not super publicly. Like I've shared a little bit on my TikTok, but not so much like in this kind of conversation. So I know that, my husband used to say exactly that I was not me when I was drinking. And, me is actually pretty special. I've grown to love myself, and I don't need to drink in order to love myself. I used to feel like I had to drink to numb and to mask and to have that energy, but like I have this energy regardless of the alcohol. In fact, it's way more real and authentic without it than it was with it. So, you know, I know that, and you can share as much or as little about this as you want, but I know that you've had some struggles too.
Yeah.
And, knowing that and talking with you about that, there's such power in sharing these things that are kind of hard to talk about. So, can you talk us through your 2024 a little bit in terms of how you walk through that valley and more importantly, how you worked your way through it and out of it?
Well, I'll go back even further. It's interesting because that moment I walked out and handed my mom the trophy and walked home, I walked home to go smoke weed.
Mm.
Like that's what I did, right? So I was all sports, and then when I was 12 years old, I got invited to come hang out with I was part of the cool athlete clique, but then there was like a cool party clique that invited me to hang out. For the first time I ever ingested anything, foreign in my body, wine coolers, beer, tequila shots, and bong rips, like at 12. So, that the weed kept going. The alcohol wasn't a big thing until high school came, and then there was high school parties, and now you combine the two. I also, started smoking cigarettes at 12 and stealing them from my dad. And then when I got to college, I mean, we were in a four stoplight town with these brilliant minds. And if you've ever been in an institution where it's one of the academic organizations or places to be, what you will recognize really fast is they work really, really hard and play just as hard. Every place I've ever been with that type of level of intelligence, that's what I've seen. And so it just carried on. And like we really learned how to take them back. Um, but then you leave and that, you know, power hour century club, walking around with a shirt and people marking on, how many shots you've taken on, like that stuff that's college. That's like a world that doesn't exist in society. And now you're supposed to manage all of that. And hey, I'm always careful in calling myself a former addict and in talking in therapy, what I've come to note is that I wasn't an addict as much as I had a toxic relationship with things, because stopping or taking, 75 days to do 75 hard or choosing not to indulge was not an issue for me. The issue was when I chose to indulge, we got down. Like, I'm you want to party, like you better be ready, right? But if you don't want to party, I just didn't have to. Um, but then you get older, and now look, I'm not going out to nightclubs when I got three kids and a wife. I'm not. I've got a few friends who may come over, but like I'm at the house, and then you're by yourself, and then it's now I'm indulging in weed and alcohol and cigarettes to just slow my mind down because my mind's racing because I haven't dealt with anything that's, you know, been building up over the last couple of years or that day. And you start to rationalize, well, I'm just like I was as a kid, I'm taking care of all my responsibilities. So, you know, I can kind of do what I want. And my parents would let me go and do things because it was like, what can I say to him? He's getting straight A's. He's in the newspaper for sports. His room's clean. He's taking care of his little sister when we need him. Like, what do you say? Like, and then you start to rationalize that as an adult. Well, I'm providing for my entire family as a sole breadwinner. I'm at all of my kids' events. I'm doing everything I can to be a loving father and a better husband. But when it's bedtime and everyone goes to sleep, oh, that's my time. Mm. And I found my time happening too often. And the level of intake that my body could take rising and rising and rising. And so, it came to a head, not actually in 2024, but in 2025, when my middle son had asked if he could get a Bible. And I was like, okay, why? Because his mom was raised Catholic, and she doesn't go to mass or anything like that, but she stops at church whenever she needs to pray. I always talked about spirituality in the universe, and so they had these conversations at the dinner table, and he chose that route, and I was proud of him for making a decision. And he was just like, I don't know, I really enjoy reading Psalms and like seeing those on videos and stuff like that. I want to read it for myself, and I had always spent time in my life at different points searching out a relationship with God, not in a religious way, but in a personal connection way. And I was like, you know what? I think it's time for me to return to that and give it a real try. And that's what I did. And it just turned out wonderful. I mean, I felt at peace. I didn't feel the need to slow my mind down. I didn't feel like I was carrying these burdens that I couldn't share with anybody. And what I came to find really quickly was the toxic relationship I had with alcohol and weed was actually a toxic relationship I had with myself.
Mm. I want to ask you to say more about that.
Yeah.
Because how do you fix that? Like, how do you start working on fixing that relationship? Because that obviously first you have to see it, right? Like you have to see it, you have to understand that this is okay, I am the problem, but also I, with the help of God in this conversation, am the solution. So,
Yeah.
but getting there is hard. I mean, like, as somebody that's been in that and had to make that decision, it's not easy. And it's a
Oh,
daily decision to choose yourself and to love yourself enough to not go back down that road. So,
yeah.
I mean, when you talk about the Bible and reading the Bible and how that helped you, can you get practical with us and say like how that like what it was, or was there a moment that things kind of started to shift, or how do how do you work through that uncomfortable part of understanding that oops, I am the problem.
Yeah. One, like you said, is recognition. Two, you have to pour into yourself, right? And so I started to create disciplinary habits. I was going to read 2 pages a day of the Bible, and I've never read it, but I've read all the other religious texts except that one. I was going to read through the whole thing. I was going to engage in prayer. I was going to exercise. I was, gonna pick back up my meditation and be very committed. And I was going to do these things. And so I utilize those daily habits to allow me to continue to grow that momentum. But the other thing is, there's always a moment, and even if you miss that moment, another one will come where you get to make a decision. And for me, the moment was I had been like sitting out back and I looked into the house, and there's a big window that's like kind of floor to ceiling. But from the light outside and the light inside, plus the TV and the sun, the way the reflection was looking, when I looked in, I saw my reflection and I looked like my dad.
Mm.
Like same posture, same look on his face, same the way we would rub our hands. And I was like, oh shit. Yeah, I'm not doing the things my dad was doing in terms of the level of narcotic. And so I thought it was okay. But like, oh no, my sons are experiencing the same thing, just with something different, same shit, different day. And that moment for me was like, nope, can't, can't. I love my dad to death, but no, I don't want that relationship to have that backstory. So there's going to be moments like that that will come where you have to make a decision. And if it's something that is aversive enough, you'll make the right decision, right? And the other thing is, people have a tendency to go on this hamster wheel of growth. I start here, rise, 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 and I'm right back and doing this. And one of the things that helped me understand what growth really is visualizing it in a different way. Instead of making this mistake and beating myself up and not giving myself grace, was instead of a hamster wheel, it was going to be a corkscrew. So I'd go around, I'd make some mistakes, but I'm going to keep moving forward. Make some mistakes, and I'm going to keep moving forward. But it's going to continuously go up, right? Sometimes that little funnel will get shorter and it'll go up faster. Sometimes it'll get longer because I've gone around the bend, right? And so thinking about it in that way, instead of, all right, it's okay, I made that mistake. I'm not going to beat myself up about it, but what am I going to do next step? Where am I going to go? Right. And it's just, what's the next thing? And here's the other part. When you start to pour into yourself, you have to be willing to accept the good that comes with it. And what I mean is, you'll start to recognize things that you didn't see before. And you can either beat yourself up about it, or you can go, man, I feel blessed. My eldest son, who used to be attached to my hip, once he kind of got into the fourth, fifth grade, like our relationship was just different. Um, and I was just like, I don't know if he even likes me. Like, I know he loves me, but does he even like his dad? And when I started to get pour into myself, guess what? He started talking to me more on his own. Now I could have gone, man, I messed that up so much. Look at what I could have had. I feel bad about myself. I'm going to go do something else to make me feel better. Or I could have gone, oh, this is one of the benefits. I love that benefit. I'm going to keep doing this so I get more of that thing.
Self-love has been a journey for me personally, and I talk about it in my book, Triumphs of Transformation, quite a bit. It's the S in storm. So in my chapter, I discuss becoming the storm, and storm is a acronym for self-love, tenacity, optimism, relationship, and mindset. And the self-love part, I think feels very hard for people to break down. Like if you don't understand how to love yourself, I don't know how you can start loving yourself. So, one of the analogies that comes to mind for me is it's an analogy I can't take credit for. I heard it at Rachel Hollis's Rise Minneapolis event back in 2019, but she was describing a vase and how the vase, you can be full of water and you can keep pouring and pouring and pouring, but eventually that vase will be empty and or crash and fall and break and shatter into a thousand many pieces. Versus if you stand tall and let the world and the blessings, like you said, like you just see so much more. I think for me, it's just been like life changing how when you're not numb, you do experience so much more bad. And you actually get to experience all of the good. So when you stand tall and you let those good things, that good energy pour into you, it overflows as opposed to always constantly pouring out and breaking. You overflow because you're letting the world, letting God, letting your friends, family, everything pour into you, and allowing that is actually a choice of self-love.
Yes,
It's
very
just
much so.
it's a hard thing for people to take that first step. So when you and I are speaking the same language and we're both very, I'd say, self-aware. And one of the things that you talk about in your courses and in your work is self-awareness. So I think it's a superpower, but how do people do it? Like how do you be more self-aware so that you can then start loving on yourself harder?
I think I think one of the common misconceptions is that it's something you have to try to do or be. You're already self-aware. You're just lying to yourself about certain things. Stop lying. Like it's as simple as that. You know the truth. You know the truth when you look in the mirror, what you are and are not doing. Like stop. You know when you're lying to yourself and when you're lying to others, but you know, right? You're already self-aware. What you do with that, that's where it comes into play. If you know that you're lying to yourself about something, let's do something different. I have a client I worked with, and um, it wasn't anything that had to do with addiction or anything. So it wasn't in the terms of detrimental in her life in that way. But one of the things I told her was stop comparing yourself to the outside world of what is supposed to be. If this is how you want to be, accept it or stop complaining about it. If you're complaining about it, it means you don't like it and you want to be something else. Well, then let's be something else. If if not, be fine with who you are. Like if that's what you want to do, no, I'm not judging you for it. You're judging yourself, right? So it's not about the societal expectations and the pressure from the outside. What are you actually feeling? Because if you are feeling judged about what's going on, really, are you the one who's judging yourself? Are you lying to yourself about how you actually feel about this thing? And if you are, and you want to change it, well, then let's look to a solution. But if not, and you're okay with it, stop complaining. Stop complaining, and it just accept it for what it is, right? Yeah, you are already self-aware. You've just chosen to lie to yourself.
Our friend Coach Mark says something about that where, he says, if you're not willing to fight for what you don't have, then you can't complain about it. And
Oh,
it's a powerful thing. Excuse me. So I have a couple questions that I want to wrap with that are a little bit more quick hitting.
cool.
And one of them is, what is one thing about your season that of life that you're in right now that you don't want to forget?
I think the biggest thing is that God is always with me and always has been. And it's just now that I've started to feel, recognize, appreciate, and respect that. and that it's okay to feel that. Just like we talked about, I'm going to accept that as my truth. I don't care how polarizing it feels for other people. I'm not going to beat you over the head with it, but allow me to have my truth. You want yours. I'll give you yours. This is mine.
And by living it, you embody it.
Yes.
Quick before you forget, what matters to you most right now?
My family. All that it's always been that. And that family is the ones who live in my house, plus the extended ones who show me love and support. Like, I put all my stock in relationships. I'm very aware that without others, I don't exist. And so we are social creatures. And as much as we love to give love and we cringe at receiving it often, like, don't rob others of that gift, right? You feel that love when you share. Let those do that for you. And so I'm accepting that love in a way that I've never accepted it before.
One of your catchphrases, and I believe you might have a course built around it, is much love always. Talk to us a little bit about what that means to you and why you feel passionate about sharing that message.
Much love always embodies unconditional love. And it has nothing to do with whether or not I know you, whether or not you're a friend or foe. It is a constant reminder that in my response to anything, I can choose love. I can choose love. I was just sharing with you before this. I got into, it wasn't even a fender bender. Some guy kind of sideswiped me. And when we got out, it was his fault. But he was an older gentleman, and he was not basically, he was telling me it was my fault, and he called me guy, which, like, I don't know why that triggered me, and so I made it very clear, not by getting in his face or a physical confrontation, but by having a deeper voice, a louder tone, and overpowering his words with mine, that I wasn't to be messed with. And the moment the interaction was over, before I got to the end of the block, I was apologizing, just being like, I shouldn't have done that. Like, that's not the love I could have shown. No matter how he came outside of that car, I could have been more gentle. I could have been more understanding. I didn't have to react that way. So what is it going on inside me where I need to love a little bit more of myself to make sure that doesn't happen? So much love always is always thinking about love in every situation, whether it's good, bad, ugly, pretty, hard, easy, doesn't matter. You can choose love.
Much love always to you, Coach Doc. I really appreciate you and your time today, and I don't want to cut us off without asking if there's something else that you want to share or talk more about, and then I will wrap.
No, I'll do one of the shameless self plugs. I will be picking back up my podcast, Doc's Daily Dose, at some point. Um, I am finishing up on a 4-book series that it will be released that also has embedded with it the podcast I did with my dad called Like Son, Like Father, where you get to hear his entire life story and mine, an honest conversation between a father and son. I bring my mom, my sister, my brothers in. And yeah, I'm going to continue to, if you want to check out anything I'm doing, docharrison.com is where you can find it. And one Coach Doc, ONE Coach Doc on any of the social stuff is where you can find me, or Dr. Harrison, Antonio Harrison on LinkedIn. And I got some work to do, and I'm putting out some things. And so come check it out.
Well, I'm excited. And I think that I was going to wrap, but I need to talk to you more about your book a little bit because we did kind of tease that conversation in our first chat, and we got 2 sentences deep, and I want to go a little deeper. So you talked about the structure, but revisit it for folks that maybe didn't get that episode, and then talk through what your goals are and what your hopes are for that book.
So the working title right now is Finding God. I mean, the 4 books are pregame in first quarter, second quarter and halftime, third quarter, maybe third and fourth quarter, and then fourth quarter and overtime. Yeah, I'm a coach. I broke it up in coach language in the quarters of the year. But it's my journey through 2025 and making a deliberate, conscious effort to seek out a relationship with God. And it's not filled with Bible verses. It's not filled with religion. It is filled with real, honest reflections about things that I went through in that year, my ups and downs, the moments where I was riding really high and then I crashed really, really hard. Um, and just kind of how that all unfolded to bring me to 2026, just a new chapter in my journey. So that is the working title. My middle son, who's the artist, is working on the cover of the books. And yeah, I'm really hoping that these books will connect with someone who's seeking a relationship with God in whatever form that is for you, and who's struggling with things and needs to find a way out, um, knowing that they don't have to do it by themselves. They don't.
I
You just
hope
don't.
I hope and pray that you will come back on to share more about the book when it comes to launch time, more about the books, I should say. There's multiple. I would be honored, as I have been honored to host you twice in a very short period of time, and I don't take that lightly. That is a joy, that is a privilege, and I am so grateful for you, sir. And that is all for us today. So please, when things get hard, when you're feeling like you're spiraling, when you're feeling that loss that Doc was talking about, come back to Quick Before You Forget. Thank you for being here with me today on Quick Before You Forget. Please like, share, and subscribe, as that helps the show so much, and I really appreciate it. And I'll see you next time on Quick Before You Forget.